Okay, welcome to the Shem of Kolel in Bat, Israel. Um, so this week's Torah portion, where we discussed a little bit, it's really, really remarkable. It's the idea of the Rebbe's continuing the theme of what is redemption. And we'll know redemption from the word of redemption. In Hebrew, the word actually means, it's the meaning, it's like the title is not just random, it's the very essence of everything. Because everything in life has an essence. That's one of the problems of the kind of secular mindset, is we're not looking at the essence of things. We're looking at kind of the object or even the objective, or we're looking at the, what's bigger. My father told me, it's that Klippa, not holy, is based on more or less, right? The person always wants more, he doesn't want less. But Kedusha is not about more or less. It's about what's better or what's worse. So like more of something doesn't necessarily mean it's better. More food doesn't necessarily mean better, right? So more or less doesn't really matter. What matters is better or worse. And that gets the essence of the thing. What's this thing going to do? What's the result of this thing? And that's what it says. Izel Chacham, who is wise, who sees what's going to occur. And so you have these crazy philosophies, certainly communism. So it's very easy for a group of people to come up with an idea and say, if we force the whole world to do this, then the world will be good. What's the consequence of that idea? So the consequence of communism is everybody became poor, and the government that would force people became murderers. What's the consequence of this crazy left-wing ideology? Is, so we see very clearly, first of all, they're denigrating the idea of marriage. So people are having less children. In any event, people need to be encouraged to do the right thing. And there are countries that are going to disappear. European countries that lived for thousands of years, they've already passed the point that even if they all start having lots of kids, they're just going to disappear. Japan's at the top, right? So what does that mean? That means that a human being, this is something that I kind of taught in my class yesterday, but I think it's a very important point, and because we're kind of broadcasting to the whole world. So therefore, it's important that everybody knows this, that, there are many philosophies that discuss this concept, but just to put it into kind of a simple and direct words, human being can be run from one of three possibilities. The first possibility is what we call the animal soul, which is we all have, you want to call it a little animal, and that's kind of the body, and it has instincts, things that it desires. So a little child, for example, is run by its instinct, whether it's hunger, or then it can also be angry that it doesn't get its way. So a human being, basically, that's run by their instincts, like a baby, in effect. Somebody, God forbid, is addicted to drug. So what's happening is that there's an instinct, there's a desire, and that desire is running them. Or even if somebody is angry, it's the same thing. It's just an instinct. A person that's mentally healthy can see different opinions, can realize some people, one of the great minds, maybe one of the greatest minds that ever existed, was the guy von Neumann. Von Neumann invented the computer, he invented algorithms, he invented game theory. So his thing is like, you can't be upset about people that aren't good. They're not good. It's like, I saw this thing that the Maharal of Prague, one of the greatest questions for, a rabbi is, why do bad things happen to good people? So he says, bad things happen. Like an interesting answer. It's like, don't get so concerned. There are other answers, but in a certain sense, like one of the greatest minds, what do you go crazy that guy's not a tzaddik? He's not a tzaddik. Right? So a healthy mind can understand, okay, not everybody's righteous. Some people are not. Fine. Their instincts got the better. An unhealthy mind, a childish mind, everything has to be what they want. So if it doesn't work according to their plan, it's a disaster. So it's because the mind isn't developed. What's developed is the heart, the emotions, the desire, the ego is developed, but the mind isn't developed, because the mind can contain even contradictory information. If you come to me and say, by the way, there's the universe doesn't have gravity. I say, okay, prove it to me. I'm not emotional about it. I believe in gravity, but I'm not emotional. So whenever a person is emotional, then emotions Not always, because certain emotions, obviously, like love, are very important, etc., and staying away from bad is very important. But 90% of the time, the person is very emotional, especially all these radical groups that know what's wrong with everybody else, and they have to dominate and convince everyone. Like Churchill said, a radical is somebody that can't change their mind, won't change the subject. But that is like righteous indignation, and this basically all radical movements, whether it's far right, far left, they all basically have one subtitle: righteous indignation. And righteous indignation is basically jealousy and hate, and that's really what's running it. Because if you really were an intelligent human being, your question is, what can I do to make the world a better place? It's not about harming and all this stuff about justice, not about justice, but injustice or vengeance. If you're really trying to help people, you're trying to elevate them. You're not trying to push anyone down to stand up higher. So that's one thing. So on one level, person is run by emotions, and they have to have emotions. I think I mentioned this once, that through a certain process, I was able to get rid of the ego, but I had no desire, no more drive. And Ibn Ashab says that all of even the drive to get any of your drive starts with ego. That's why it's so unfortunate. When somebody's depressed, they lose from kind of, if you want to ask psychiatrists, what's the symptoms of depression? So they lose their sex drive and their appetite. But what's really happened from Chassidus is they lost their love for themselves, or they hate themselves. So when a person loses the love for themselves, why do you want to feed yourself? Because you love yourself. If somebody else, your friend, is hungry, you give it to your friend or your child. The point is, it's love that has in it the word have, to give, is there. But if the person doesn't love the person, so they don't even desire to help the person. And so there has to be an ego, which in a certain sense, the ego is just self-love. There has to be that self-love. And that self-love is a big subject, which is discussed different dimensions, has to be there, right? It's the gas in the car. Without the gas, without the electricity, your car isn't going anywhere. It's interesting, but I was on Sam Altman's blog. The guy that started ChatGPT, and he's working with some other people that are trying to really create fusion where energy is going to be like free of charge. And that's going to change the world. It's going to make a world where it's going to be infinite, because 50% of the electricity that's used is used by companies. So if you just, if you freed up, can you imagine what their electricity bill would get less, and then the cost of production of transportation would go down to nothing. And once that cost goes down to nothing, the same item that, where you're paying 30% because of transportation and all that stuff. So it's going to be a very interesting time. So you spoke a little bit about this idea of like, where it will be tremendous prosperity in governments. And interesting, because we see the world heading into Moshiach times. People are thinking along these lines. The government can give basic income. Even some Arab country that tells us they should give everyone $30,000, leave us alone. So it's like it's an interesting times that we're living in. But in any event, that's not what the class is about. The class is because what's really going to happen. And so if you do have everything, and really in a way it's happening now, because we're living unbelievably prosperous times, and we do wish that everybody has the finance, because you need something. There's no question about it. You do need a basic income. Everyone needs that, and on all the good things. But in the end of the day, the next question is, when you do have that, so what do I do with my time now? The example that I've given is like, you're on a boat and you have everything, but you don't know where you're going. You don't know what you're doing. And that is a very painful place for a human being, being a spiritual entity. It's a soul, the high thing. Avi, joining us? Welcome. So this could be very painful. So we're saying this class is about this idea, or it's actually about a couple of ideas, but that a person can be driven by three, maybe I said it in the past, we were at the artist court, but can be driven by three basic things. Number one, a person can have their emotions run them. And that, obviously, you have to have on some level emotions, right? Because that is the fuel, right? You have to get hungry, otherwise you wouldn't eat. But on the other hand, if a person is only into emotions, this is what happens in secular cultures, because they don't have anything meaningful in life, then they take some kind of, whether it's like it's crazy sexual prediction, or predilections, or whether it's people become foodies. I love this word, foodies, where that's your goal in life, the chicken. and then people get into these mishigasin, and people, I don't know, they retire and they get into some kind of the woodworking, right? So it's, in a way, it's better than doing nothing and making your wife crazy. But the truth of the matter is that life has meaning to it. It has value to it. You're here to make the world a better place. So these things that people are doing, just because you enjoy it it's not enough. Life has to be more than just a pleasure. And that's really what the emotions do for us. They give us pleasure. And the next level is kind of a little bit of a higher level. And this is kind of a person which we would call it the good boy or a good girl. They kind of do what their society tells them to do. And you think they're a little bit more productive or this and that. But ultimately, it's a very dangerous space to be in, right? To follow the herd is very dangerous. Why? Because what if the herd is going off the cliff? And that's what we see in all societies. You see it very clearly throughout human history. Now, they say hindsight is 20/20. So what does this show us? It shows us that right now we're after 5,000. Even if you just look at it from a perspective of anthropology, civilization started 5,000 years ago. So however you cut it, human beings have been playing around with civilization for 5,000 years. And what do we see now? We can look back at the whole story. Every single civilization basically is messed up. Why? Because a civilization kind of like a family or like a tribe. And if the leader is messed up, the civilization is going to be like, if your leader is para, what he believes is, God forbid, killing Jewish babies or whatever, he's just a narcissist and he wants a big deal. Literally, they have these big pyramids. And ever been to Egypt? Pyramids? No? I met a guy before he was religious. He was there, very interesting, but online. Kind of heard a voice which was like, "Don't go in; it's very impure." And whatever, we all hear these voices once in a while. Don't know what to do with them. So as he got to pay, he lost his wallet. His wallet was gone. As he left, his wallet was back. So they had a lot of wisdom and a lot of klippa, a lot of dark magic and things like that. But again, what's it all about? So even if you have it, so you died in this big statue, what's going on? Like there was an Arab that literally he had in the sand, he like kind of had engraved his name. So if you're in outer space, you happen to be looking down at a radio, you'll see his name. Baruch Hashem, another Arab, a sheikh, but he put $10 billion into painting, but like coating his yacht gold. Baruch Hashem, the guy's got a golden yacht. Now that's going to make the world a much better place. So if the leadership is corrupt, if the leadership doesn't know what they're doing, how are the followers going to follow anything? So you could be a good boy. And this is very, very dangerous, in fact. Einstein said, and Einstein was there in Germany, he said, never follow the state, follow the conscience. Because if the state itself, look what happened in Germany, and I think that, many of the Germans were normal people. And yet, because they accepted a certain philosophy that they didn't question, they turned into mass murder. And the same thing is happening now, with the terrible, not only is it abortion, killing little born babies, evil, pure evil, the attitude towards literally killing in many European countries, older people, murder, pure murder. And you go to Canada now, basically they're telling doctors, and they're forcing doctors. We had some doctors that were here. She literally stopped being a doctor because I can't take my oath, which is do no harm. They're trying to convince doctors to assist in suicide. The guy's depressed. One of the options the doctor has to tell them is, by the way, you can take your life. So we're talking about pure evil. And where does it come from? It comes from people that are messed up and they hate themselves and they hate life. That's what it is. I spoke to a professor. Now, this professor I mentioned, this professor himself is gay. So you can imagine how conservative he is. But he's a normal guy. He's a nice guy. He's kicked out of Harvard for being too liberal. So it's like unbelievable what's going on. I'm really mad. And so he tells me, says the only thing that that makes sense to me of this is that it's nihilism. It's like it's a desire, it's a self-hate. It's truly the only thing that makes sense. It's like a desire to, and that happens in people. Unfortunately, people can, God forbid, hate themselves, but they're too, I don't want to go into the whole psychology of how it happens, too embarrassed to actually kill themselves. So they basically want to destroy everyone. And this is kind of look, that's actually what Hitler did, right? He killed as much as he could, and then he killed himself. So it wasn't a person that had a positive motive. Even even Iran, the Iranians, they don't care about Iran. They said let Iran burn. They don't care if they just care about their jihad. That's all they care about. They don't care. They have no morals, no conscience. That's all they care. They sent a million Iranians to their death, right? Strapped, kids and had to walk over landmines. This is the reality of the world. So, be that as it may, Russia with its cosmonauts, they sent people up to space. If the guy comes down or not, that doesn't matter. Was the mission accomplished? So this is kind of a mentality where okay. So what are we seeing for this? All of this to relate to something practical. Number one, a human being could be run by emotion, and you have to have emotions, but too much emotion is not good. You also have to have intelligence. But a person can't just follow their crowd. The only time we find in human history that societies functioned in a healthy way was when the leader was tzaddik. The leader was Moshe Rabbeinu. Because the Rebbe, whenever you follow a tzaddik, and even now you have many different groups, certainly groups, Hasidic groups, they follow a Rebbe, and the Rebbe is healthy. And literally, the whole movement's going to be just as healthy as the leader is. That you even have, unfortunately, within Orthodox Judaism, some groups that the leader is unhealthy. No group is unhealthy. Why? Because the group takes the role modeling of the leader. But ultimately, this really what Chabad is about is we have to have a personal relationship with Hashem. We have to use our own head. A person has to become a leader. Did I speak about the Maslow hierarchy? Maybe it's a different class. Yeah. So the idea is there's a very famous psychologist, Abraham Maslow. You heard of him? He was a very special psychologist. Most psychologists themselves are messed up, but a few of them really understood they were good. So Abraham Maslow was good. He said, he spoke about Freud was studying unhealthy people. He said he studied unhealthy people, end up with unhealth. You study with healthy people, you end up with health. So, and of course, it's about psychology. So Abraham Maslow has this idea that human beings have kind of basic needs, and it's very true, right? On a basic level, we have a need for safety and security. So you can't tell a guy that's looking for food, why don't you think about God right now? No, right now he needs food. And also, you don't even have the mental space because you're in a certain need. And then he speaks about, we have needs for love, like safety, food, biological needs. We have need for love. But then we have this other thing, and also self-esteem. Self-esteem is very important. A person has to have a positive. We have to love ourselves, right? Everybody's a part of Hashem. Hashem chose you. So even if somebody else was jealous of you and made you feel bad, Hashem loves you. That's why you exist, only from the words of Hashem, because He loves us. But then, apart from those things, we also have self-actualization. In other words, he studied people that are successful, and he realized they're not waiting for everybody else. They're see a little bit in Israel also. People in Israel, they go get the job done. Or even they go to the States. They decide they're on a mission, and they go and they fulfill their mission. So this is very important to understand that if a person wants, if you want to use the word self-actualization, if you want to, or actualize yourself, if you want to bring your potential into reality, you have to do it. No one else can do it for you because it's your potential. And the Rebbe says every single person has a special mission in this world, and you got to figure out what your mission is. You have to do it. Now, I think it's kind of a little system that I came up with, but I think it's very, very useful to have a self-actualization buddy. In other words, you have to think to yourself, what are my goals? If I could achieve my goals, what would they be? A, B, C, D. And then you should have a friend that also does it, and you send the friend a list. Then every Sunday, you go, you report back, let's say goal number 1, I don't know, I want to eat healthy. 1 to 10. This week I did number 2. Because when you report back to someone else, there's a certain sense of shame involved. And therefore, it's very beneficial. It's actually the Rebbe's technique to report back to somebody because then you want to look good. So if we just, first of all, ask ourselves, what are our goals? And number 2, send that to somebody. And number 3, have each other report back. I think everybody could accomplish anything. So this is a very, very important technique in life. Now I'm going to go back to the Sikha that we're discussing. So the Sikha says a very interesting thing. You heard some of this, the idea of Goyla and Geula, that that the difference between exile and redemption is the Aleph. So that was last week. That's very rare that they ever should do this. They continue the same sticker, like an amazing idea. It's like very well fleshed out. Like it ever goes from the beginning to the end. In fact, it might be the only time that I can think of in the last 4 years where it ever actually takes one idea, and then next week he says another sifra, which is the same idea, but just doing more detail. So Rebbe explained that the Aleph, right? We say the word Goyla is Gimel Vav Lamed Hey, and Geula Gimel Aleph Vav Lamed Hey. And the only difference is the Aleph. He says the Aleph has 3 levels to it. And this is really the 3 stages of the revelation of kind of Hashem, and 3 stages in Moshiach and in our own life. Very important. Did I teach you this thing, the Aleph, the 3 levels? No? Okay, good. So you can enjoy. So the number 1 Aleph represents Aluf Shel Olam Hashem. So the first stage of redemption, remember, redemption is we're all in a ship. We have what we need, but we don't know why we're here. And redemption is to figure out the why. Not the what, but the why of the what. The first thing is that there is a God, and he's the captain of the ship. And you are one of the, what you want to call it, sailors, one of the workers on his ship. And you have, and everybody has a mission. And that's why you're here. You're here for the mission. And it's not only you now, it's everyone, past, present, future. The tree that existed 1,000 years ago was because it had a mission and a purpose in Hashem's world. Each one of us has a mission and a purpose. And it's a very beautiful thing. Why? Because a lot of the philosophies that exist, what they do is they create basically one of 2 opposite directions. One direction is everybody can do whatever they want. Nobody should tell anyone what they can do. And the other is, no, this is right, and everybody has to do what's right. And basically, almost all philosophies fall into one of those 2 categories. Usually the one of, this is right, everybody has to do. But the truth is, there's a third philosophy, and that's the truth. And that is that everybody is part of Hashem's team, but we all have a special part. So, for example, it's a symphony. You are playing, I don't know, the violin, and you are playing, I'm just going to say the trombone, and the other guy playing the cello. So we're all playing in the same symphony, but we all have a special part. And only if you understand that, you understand that you're part of the whole. You do have unity, because a lot of times people want to make everybody into one because they want unity. But at the same time, you also have individualism. You also have you. And that's the true thing, because Hashem is infinite. So we can do 2 even opposite things at the same time. We're all in it together. And at the same time, we all have an infinite story in the story, right? Hashem creates a person within a person. Well, every single shell, everything that is alive comes from this little seed that comes from within something else and is born and gives birth. So Hashem can have realities within realities. So your personal reality is a reality within a reality. So there's the global reality, an infinite reality, but there's also the personal reality in your relationship with Hashem and your personal growth, but that's part of the bigger picture, not an individual thing that's separate from everyone else. It's something that's connected to everyone else. And every generation has a Moshe Rabbeinu, and a Moshe Rabbeinu is really the one that's not, again, it's not about the Rebbe. It's not about, oh, wow, there's the Rebbe and he's the man. Even Mashiach is not about Mashiach. The Rebbe says Mashiach is Shliach. He is the messenger of Hashem. He's here to empower you. He's here to help you become your godly soul. We find what Yeshua was very upset that, I think it was Yeshua, that the people were prophesying. Moshe Rabbeinu said that all Jews should be prophets. So the Moshe Rabbeinu's generation is not there for his ego. He doesn't even want the job. He's forced by Hashem to do it. He's there to help us grow. And so we're all part of the picture, and he himself is a part of the picture. Moshe Rabbeinu can't do everything. Hashem does not allow Moshe Rabbeinu to do your job, because what you have to do, Moshe Rabbeinu is not allowed to do. Right? The Rebbe in 1 second could bring Mashiach. That if previous Rebbe said that Rebbe Rashab, my father, could have brought Mashiach through miracles, he chose Chassidus. In 1 second, he could have shown such miracles where everyone saw with the Rebbe, very in a certain group, they call people saints if they did 3 miracles. I know they gave a blessing and it was impossible. The Rebbe, every second there was 3 miracles like that. So what does this show us? It shows us that the Mashiach is about the revelation of Hashem and your story with Hashem. That's stage number 1. Stage number 2 of Aleph what we call Aleph Chachma, Aleph Bina. Now, what is that? This is the Torah, and this is Chassidus. Because the Torah and Chassidus, they give us already a higher reality. It's not only God, it's interconnected to the first thing, but it's Torah and Chassidus. And the third thing is very, very interesting. Because how do you spell? If you spell Aleph backwards, what do you get? Pella. What is Pella? Made. Wonder. Crazy. Right. It's like something wondrous. Now, what is something that's a wonder? It's something that exists that you don't understand. So if suddenly the moon, shined like the sun, by the way, it says when Moshiach comes, the moon will shine like the sun. And now, based on science, the moon actually shines like the sun. It has a certain, I don't know what it is. It's just a frequency. We don't see it. It's a frequency. But the radiance of the moon is actually as great as the radiance of the sun. So the story is that, obviously a cold light, but the brightness is there. So the story is that there's also another way of Hashem interacting with the world, and it's a little bit the way of this, and that is a way of we might have spoken about it, which is the idea of Goizolov Yerachi. But when Hashem created the world, it says that the world existed and the water covered the world. That the spirit of Shem hovered over the water. Right? That's like the pasuk al Goizolov Yerachi, that the eagle hovers over the nest. It's a whole big subject. I don't want to go too much into it. The Maggid speaks about it a lot. Like arriving and not arriving. Everything in the world, Hashem is like a heartbeat that comes and doesn't come. Right? So this is the idea of Mashiach, because the Ruach Elikim, the spirit of Hashem, is actually, it says, Rashi says, Mashiach, this is the spirit of Mashiach. And when Mashiach comes, it says that all the tzaddikim will grow wings and they'll like fly over the water. So what does that mean? It means, well, our Avos Hashem and Yiras Hashem will help us like kind of be in this state like a bird and a fish. The way they walk or the way they fly is they have a push, and they go forward, push, go forward, push, go forward. And so that system is a new kind of system in life. And I think technology is actually helping us get to this system. By nature, I'm from the tribe of Levis. I'm a philosopher. Tribe of Levis, they're philosopher people. And I remember when I was more spiritually sensitive or maybe more aware, I was sometimes able to see somebody that was from the tribe of Levi. They're they're a philosophical kind of person. Now, the thing is that philosophy is like, you have to do it and you have to be calm and think things through. Now, one thing that these devices have done is they've sped us up. Like, sped us up. So I remember this guy, nice guy, he got me a BlackBerry. Remember the BlackBerries? I don't remember. Got me a BlackBerry. So that was the first, it was so cool, you're texting, Oliver Shelton, right? So, Scotland for the BlackBerry. So, he got me a BlackBerry, and what I noticed was that I had to be quicker in my thinking, right? Before, if you wanted to speak to someone, he comes over to you, hi, how are you? Coffee, all thoughts. Now, suddenly, people are texting. They want an answer now, right? And not only that, you're going back and forth. But it's not like back and forth where you're chilling out together. You're like back and forth. You got to like focus. If you look at kids today, a lot of them, they're like, right? Because their minds are in this text world. They have to deal with all these stuff. So first of all, it's not very healthy. You look at a lot of the religious kids that don't have it. They're a lot, like you see them, their minds are operating on a much calmer, much healthier frequency. Very bad to get a kid a phone until they're 18 or something. But be that as it may, what's happening is it's speeding up our response time. We've learned that we can't respond in 1 second. We have to respond I shouldn't say in 1 second. We can't respond in an hour. I'm going to take my time. We have to know how to deal. And it's not a bad thing, by the way. Why? Because Moshiach is at infinite speed. Now, what does infinite speed mean? Infinite speed doesn't mean that it has a speed, because anything that's truly infinite doesn't exist. Because if it exists, it's already finite. You can have one thing that goes on infinitely, but that means it exists. it has to have an infinite force that will take it infinitely. Because itself, it can't go on infinitely. So infinity doesn't exist. It creates choices. Infinity decides we're going to make a world, and the world will exist forever. So it takes something finite, but the infinite thing, it has to be around it all the time, because if the infinite thing wasn't there, then the finite thing can't exist. Right? We now know from science, I don't know if you're aware of this, that the world comes in and out of existence. Ever study China? Yeah, so the world comes in and out of existence all the time. So the point is that we have infinite kind of infinity is creating the finite. Now, what does that mean practically? We are finite people. Well, basically only think of one thing at a time. I don't know if you know this, but women can think of 3 things at a time. And most men probably don't believe that when you say that, because it sounds impossible. There was a time in my life, very short period, that I was able to actually think of 3 things at the same time. But it's a real thing that you could literally have a cognitive thought, like you know what you're thinking about. You're thinking about 3 different things at the same time. So probably there are geniuses that might be able to think of many, many things at the same time. So Hashem can have infinite thoughts at the same time. You know, today we can imagine a computer that can literally think of every single thing that exists at the same time, right? Right now we have satellites in the sky as we speak, 24 satellites. It literally knows where every single car in the world is, every single phone, and is able to direct it. So it doesn't have any limitation on its thinking capacity. 0 limitation. So Hashem, the Rebbe actually speaks about, we discussed this before, the Rebbe gives a mushal of Hashem of a computer. It has infinite capacity, infinite data. So now that you understand this, it's not a question of what, it's like what doesn't matter anymore. We said earlier that in Klipa and the opposite of holiness, more or less is a very big thing. But in holiness, it's not more or less. It's what is better or worse. What is good? It's goodness that matters. So ultimately, if Hashem is the essence of goodness, He created the best case scenario. The best case scenario. What is the best case scenario? It's first of all, the dark. Why is darkness so good? We're learning this in the Mimer. And darkness is a very beautiful thing. Why? Because if there was no darkness, you couldn't shine. Right? If the whole world was light, whose light is God's light. So it's like, I can't have a candle in the sun. What would happen to a candle in the sun? It wouldn't exist. So for a candle to exist in the whole universe, the sun has to create a big black hole in it. And only then can this candle exist. So we can only exist because Hashem has hid Himself, and therefore we exist. So darkness is a very beautiful thing, because darkness allows us to exist. And now, basically, the 2 greatest things that can occur, which is, first of all, we can have a relationship with Hashem, because if I don't exist independently, I don't have an independent ego. And really, why do we come to Hashem? Are you about to Bob? And on the way, we're working on it. Good, that's beautiful. So why do we come to Hashem? Maybe this happened to you as well, but because we felt an emptiness in life. I had stuff, but it didn't make me happy. And that's why a lot of times you find it's actually successful people become religious. Why? Because they know I have the money, but it's not making me happy. Or somebody that has a career, the lady that was there, she was a popular career, whatever, TV show, it's not making me happy. So these are the people that will come closer to Hashem. But in any event, so in a way it was a selfish desire. I wasn't feeling good. And now I want to feel better. But that's okay, because the darkness allows you to be you. If you don't have desires, like I was saying before, if you don't have an emotion and desires, then you don't there's nothing to talk to. There's nobody there. And that's why it's very important for a child to have parents that love them and give them. Child has to develop a very big ego. In fact, the first thing that God does, we don't realize the psychology behind it, is God develops the human ego. Right? The child comes to this world, you actually look at the face of a child. Most things for children until they're 3 months old, they're like blank. Then suddenly they start to smile, they start to have whatever emotion. By the time they're 2, they're telling you what to do. Why? Because they develop this sense of entitlement. I cry and then get things. And it's very important because if they don't develop that entitlement, I spoke to this lady once, um, she worked for children who were like, unfortunately, very abused children. One of the things that they had to teach these children, little babies, they would teach them to cry. Because the child crying is basically saying, help me, or I need something. So it's a communication system. In fact, there was a lady that figured out there are like 5 things they basically need. I don't know, change the diaper, go to sleep, hunger. So the type of cry also is like, if you know, the type of amazing. I saw this, like, I think it was an Oprah show. There were like a whole bunch of mothers, 12 mothers. They had their baby. She went around and she knew what each one needed, or she told the mother what to do. Like boom, 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 boom. Each child was okay. So the child has to develop this ego. Now, the thing is, this is a beautiful thing. Hashem created us. In fact, it says the Jewish people have the biggest ego. Because why did Hashem make us with a big ego? Because you want to, like, if you have a relationship with someone, please God, get married one day soon. So you want somebody to talk to. You want somebody that's not going to agree with you and everything. That's not a challenge. You want somebody that 2 people, they have their own personalities, and then they have, whenever they get together, they like each other. Otherwise, the person that just comes, a robot. Actually, you can't marry a robot. Somebody that can't say no to you can't say yes to you because it's not real. So having a relationship, Hashem wants a relationship with us. Now, of course, for the Jewish people, it says that we're also by Shonim, we're humble because we have such a fright at Matan Torah. Our souls flew out. We went 2,000 miles or 2,000 mil, whatever that is, backwards. And then Hashem restored our souls. So we got a certain humility. Unfortunately, with time in our history, we are very humble because of what we did. But on a kind of an instinctive sense, we have a big ego. So Hashem wants us to have an ego. It says also that you could think that the negative is actually a positive because of the ego. The Jewish people sacrifice themselves for God more than any other people. In fact, it says that the Romans, they said that you could basically, a person could torture anyone into submission except for the Jew. The Jew, this is my way. And Jews gave millions, unfortunately, many times. We gave our life for Hashem. So we say this is right, and that's where the ego is a good thing. Say, I know what's right. There's Hashem in the world, and that's what I serve. And just on the subject of ego, it's very important to differentiate, right? We're talking about ego before. So the ultimate is that a person has to realize that their soul is Hashem. So who is the real me? It's my soul, Hashem. And that is the part that, because you basically want to fulfill your ego. So if that's the you, then that's the person that you fulfill, and that's a very holy thing. So last but not least, the main point is this, that Hashem is coming to us in a way of heaven. Hashem wants to have a relationship with us, but if he's always revealed, then we don't. So it allows our brain, or this, like all the points that it allows our brain to think, okay, this is what we have to do. We had this conversation the other day. I have to do this, and this is the way. And actually, he's with you in your mind. He's helping you as long as you make enough space for him to change your mind, that he is with you in your mind. If you are stubborn and say, no, it has to be this way, even spiritually, it has to be this way. If you can't change, that's already like a narcissist. That's not healthy. But if you have space to change, then you have the benefit of both. The benefit of choice, which is kind of the healthy ego, but also the benefit of humility to Hashem, or you can have mashpia, a rabbi that you can consult, however you do it, or if you go directly, if you know how, but you always have to have that space. You have to have these 2 elements. And this is the healthy human being. The human being that on one hand makes decisions, he's not letting the world dictate to him or her how to behave. On me, I make my choices. You can make choices in your life, I'll make choices in my life. But also that you allow Hashem to be your guide. And that's what Hashem wants, to be a personal guide in your life. And that takes a lot. That's the hardest thing in the world to do. My father told me that Rebbe says that Hashkacha Pratis, the idea that Hashem is always communicating to you, the hardest of it. Why? Because what's the Yetzer Hara going to attack you on most? That which is most important. In a certain sense, it's not that hard. If a person's looking the line, if I can quote myself, harder than it is to discover the truth is to do the truth you discover. Why? Maybe Israelis, they have a lot of das, they have a lot of discipline, so it's easier, but certainly for others it might be harder. Why? Because the problem is that people like to be comfortable. So I don't even mind discovering, oh, you want me to get up 5 a.m. or Torah? I'll make a new schedule. I'll have a new life. No, your job, Like a soldier can never relax. Why? Because at any moment your commander can say, go here. So a Jew has to know that he's the soldier in Hashem's army. You can't relax. Now, it doesn't mean that it has to be stressful. You have to use, and before we were saying this, part of peace in life, part of joy. And I think one of the reasons Israel comes out the highest in terms of joy, because people have self-discipline. So if you have self-discipline, you're not worried, what's that going to say. You have a certain sense. I am my own king. I'm going to make my own decisions, not in a narcissistic way, but in a healthy way. That's what they call ego strength. But this individual now also has to know that he has a general. Hashem is my general. And then you're always able to move around and change. You look at the Rebbe, it's unbelievable. Like, I think the Rebbe knew what he was doing. You see the Rebbe's whole style of speaking changed. Even the Rambam, the Rebbe writes about the Rambam, and it happens to the Rebbe as well. The Tzaddikim, at the end of their life, the way they signed their name changed. Very interesting. You actually see the word Moshiach in the Rebbe's name, the way he signed it in the last year. The Rambam, there was a change. So there was a change even in the way they signed their name. Like, you can look at the Rebbe's style of behavior. Also, stop saying my mother. He literally was able to change his whole style. This is the Rebbe of the world. He's got tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that are relying on him. Yet he can change the whole structure. Because that shows that a person is very connected to Hashem. Also, there are things that maybe if somebody suggested, we know that we do Tehillim, Shabbos, Mevarchim. So in Chabad, there's a custom every Shabbos, Mevarchim. That actually came from a suggestion of the Bente, the great-great-grandfather, Bente Raskin, I think was his name. And he used to do the Tehillim every single day. And he suggested that Hasidim should do Tehillim every single Shabbos. I think there was not every Shabbos, Mevarchim. So with the one Chassid made of this new custom with tens of thousands of people. And there are other things that people said. There was the yeshiva, they wrote to the Rebbe that they were doing the Rambam. I think it was Lubavitch Shiv, Venezuela. And the Rebbe started a whole Rambam campaign. And the Rebbe was focused, like, this is the new way. This is what we're doing. Rambam every single day. I don't know what to do, but you do it. The Chumash, the Tanya, the Rambam, they're very, very beautiful, very helpful. So we see our God, the physics Rebbe said, is a living God. In other words, Hashem is with us all the time. The commander of your ship, your general, is with you. And therefore, a person has to also have the strength of character to say, I know what's right, or discover it at least. And then also have the ability to say that right is an ongoing process. And it's obvious, because if you just focus in your little world, let's say right now you see somebody fell down, what's right now is to help that person. It depends on the circumstance. So a person has to have a fluidity. It's very important in life to be a little fluid. So generally you're stable, you have a general idea, but you're also fluid in terms of things can always change. Change is very important to recognize, and it's also very important just from a physical perspective. If God forbid there's some sugar that wants to take over the country, you have to say, okay, now it's time to go to war. There's a time for everything. A person can't just say, I just do this. This is how I live my life. And again, there's a strong addiction to that, because people don't like to change. It's not comfortable. People like to be comfortable. And so the other thing that Hashem made the world for is relationships and love. And so we have to really enjoy each other's company. And it doesn't have to be for an ulterior motive, just to have love and friendship. And these are very important things. So this is the ultimate of Moshiach. That not only do you have the idea that Hashem is running your life in the way of Torah Chassidus, but also that Hashem is your partner in life. And everything is about love. And the world is about just simply love. And once you have this kind of understanding of reality, then you're already living in Mashiach. That's the whole thing of the Aleph. You can bring Mashiach into your life. As long as we get this picture, we can literally live redeemed.